Good morning, everyone. My name's Kimberly Foreman. I'm the CEO of the Newport Beach Association of Realtors, and I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning for a very special presentation from Sara from the Newport Beach Police Department. She's our fabulous crime prevention specialist there for Newport Beach, and we actually have been honored by having her join us for a few years now in a row. And it's just a great time to regroup, refresh, remind ourselves, and reward ourselves with safety measures that we need to have. And I think this is a wonderful way to do that. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. I'm going to ask that you put any Q&A that you may have for Sara, because we will have a Q&A period for you to ask specific questions of her. You can put them in the Q&A field or the chat field, or you can raise your hand if you'd like, and we can have you speak to her directly. And without further ado, Sara, I'm gonna hand it all over to you.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, this is, I think, my third year, being able to join you guys in September to talk about safety. And I always love getting the chance to talk with your group, because it's something different that I do on like a day-to-day basis. And I love talking about personal safety. Normally, I'm talking to community members about, making sure their property is safe and that kind of thing. But I just feel like personal safety is such an important topic that I don't think is top of mind for a lot of people on a day-to-day basis. And, it's something that we don't want to, we don't want to live in fear, but we also want to be aware, and we want to, feel prepared if a situation does occur. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully the reason most of us don't think of personal safety and that kind of thing on a day-to-day basis is because we feel safe. Our normal, everyday routines don't really involve too much danger and that kind of thing. But it is good to know that there are vulnerabilities, especially in your profession, that you come across because you are dealing with strangers, and you are oftentimes going to vacant properties or places with maybe not as many people around. So there are some vulnerabilities that you do run into in a daily basis in your jobs. And then, these skills do transfer over into your personal life as well. So these are things that just you can start practicing in your day-to-day life, and it'll carry over into work, and there'll be skills that you can use, all across the board throughout your life. Just to give you guys a little bit of background on myself, because I don't know if I've shared this in the last couple of years, but if I have, it's a refresher. I've been with the Newport Beach Police Department now for 5 years. I started out in parking control here and, wrote some parking tickets, towed some vehicles. I did that for a few months before jumping into records with the police department. So, had a little bit of time there. And I did payroll for the department for a little bit before starting in my crime prevention position, which I do now. And I've been in this position for over 2 years now, coming up on, I think I'm getting close to like that 2.5-year mark. So I've learned so much, throughout the last couple of years, and I'm still learning more. I'm still talking, with our detectives and with officers, gaining their insight and doing my own research. But yeah, so I love this job, and I love this career that I have, and I'm excited to be able to share the information that I know with you guys. I'm excited to see what kind of questions you guys have for me at the end, and I'll make sure to share my contact information and have Kimberly make sure that goes out maybe in the next newsletter or some other way so it gets out to you guys. So if you have future concerns or questions, you guys know that I'm a resource for you here in the city of Newport Beach as, the crime prevention specialist. So I think the last time I was here last September, it's hard to believe it was this long ago, but I don't know if you guys remember, there was that situation with the real estate agent in Encino who it was caught on video that was basically attacked right on the front steps of a home that she had just had an open house at. And that, for me, I don't know how most of you guys, I hope you guys got to see that video. If not, go online right now. You can Google it, real estate agent attack in Encino. It's a short little video but the guy actually looks directly at the camera. You can see his face, and then you can see that he pushes her. And it's just really, for me, seeing that, you hear the different stories. We read articles sometimes of things that happen, but being able to see that video for me was like, and hopefully for you guys too, is a very big reality check. Like, Encino's not that far from Newport Beach, from Southern California, or it's in Southern California, just like we are. And it's, this realtor is going about her normal business, doing an open house. And it just was, for me, and hopefully for you guys too, like I said, a big just reality check of these things do happen. In your day-to-day profession, you can, Google it, find some more articles online about, about instances like that. And I'm going to share another one later on in the presentation of something that happened, but it is a reality that you guys do have to be aware of. And I know, like I said, day to day, you probably feel very safe going about your normal routine and going about your business, but you do need to think about safety, because you never know. Like, people are very unpredictable, and you never know when that person that's going to walk through the door or that you're going to go meet somewhere, you don't always know exactly what their intentions are. So we're going to talk about some different layers that you can add to your personal safety plan that will help protect you. Having multiple tools in your tool belt, there's not one catch-all thing that you can do that's going to be like a guarantee that something will not happen to you, or that you'll, be prepared in a situation. So the best thing you can do is think about your personal safety in like a layered approach. So we're going to talk about, things that you can do before you even meet up with someone, things that you can do while you're meeting with someone, before anything has happened. This is a totally normal person, but you can kind of gauge a situation and be aware, and then what you can do if something does actually happen. There are different tools and resources. You want to make sure you have all those layers up. The more layers you can have up, the more different types of criminals and types of people that would maybe want to harm you or rob you, those types of people, they kind of operate in different ways. Different criminals operate differently. I tell this to all my like home security folks that I talk to. Different burglars are deterred by different things. Same thing with different, any other kind of criminal. They have their different method, their different plan that they come in with, what their approach is going to be. So the more layers you can put up, the more deterrence that you hopefully can set up, so that person, at some point, one of those deterrents is going to be the thing that's going to change that person's mind, stop them from doing what they're going to do, or have them leave the situation. So, let's talk about multiple practices and habits that you can put in place that are going to help keep you safe, because like we said, the reality of your job is it requires you to be in touch with strangers on a regular basis, meeting with them in person, and like we said, going to remote areas, or even just going into an empty vacant property where no one else might be. So yeah, let's talk about some different layers that you can start putting in place to what we like to call harden the target in crime prevention. So you want to start asking yourself this question, like, how can I make myself a less appealing target? Start thinking about what you can do, and to make someone be like, okay, that person's going to be a little bit too hard to get to, or like that's going to be too difficult. What can I, like, they might start looking for somebody else at that point, or hopefully not change their mind and not want to go that route anyway, of committing a crime. But yeah, you want to make yourself the least appealing target that you can. So in that regard, you have to kind of start thinking about, what are these people, what are these criminals, what are these potential attackers, what is their mindset, what are they looking for, what kind of opportunities would they take advantage of. And in like my research, what I've learned so far is most of the time they are usually wanting some sort of financial benefit from it. So normally you're going to see a robbery kind of a situation when it comes to real estate attacks. No, but I'm not going to rule out that there could be other motivations. But normally what we're seeing is like a robbery, where they're going to try to corner you and take something from you, whether that's jewelry, if they think you have valuables or anything like that. That I think jewelry is what we've kind of seen as the most common thing, but there, could be, if they think you have cash on them nowadays, probably not. But yeah, so that's kind of, you want to think about that. So their motivation normally is financial. There could be other things as well. We can talk about that too. But kind of keep that in mind, and we'll get into a little bit more of what you can do to, to address that mindset that not burglars, these like criminals could have. And then also what they're really looking for, and this is across the board with like all crime, they are looking for isolated victims, if that makes sense. So they're looking for, people who are working alone, where they can get someone to who's going to be in a vacant or remote space. And I talk about this again when it comes to home security, other things. I usually go through a class called Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, and we talk about how criminals don't want to be seen. They want to be invisible. They want hiding places. They want to commit crimes where they're not right out in the open where people can witness them. And that probably seems pretty obvious, but in that sense, when we're talking about, environmental design, we're talking about buildings and how can we create more visibility and that kind of thing. But you can kind of keep that in mind as well. If you can not put yourself in situations where you're not as visible, or where you're not working alone, where there's another set of eyes, another person who could witness something, then you are kind of, addressing that side of how they're looking for, isolation. They're looking to be able to commit their crime without anybody witnessing or interfering with their plan. So with that in mind, I know we've probably, talked about this every year, but I think it's probably one of the best tools you can use would be the buddy system for doing showings or open houses. I think probably the strongest tool you could have is bringing another person with you, whether that is, and I would love to see this too, like having like your group, your team that you work with, having, someone available to, come with you, even if that's just for a little while, or someone can come with you for half of your open house, and then for the other half, someone joins you. If no one on your team's available, see if you can bring a friend. I know, like, as someone who doesn't work in real estate, I'd love to like see, different open houses. And if that's your time where you get to catch up with a friend or bring your sister, a family member, your husband, anybody else with you is going to be that other set of eyes, that person that's going to make that, attacker potentially second guess what they're about to do. I don't know if you guys heard about, this is the other incident that I wanted to share. I don't know if you guys heard about the Virginia real estate agent that was attacked in June of this year, actually. She was working at an open house by herself. And I want to say it was the middle of the day. And she actually is like, I want to say a 2nd degree black belt. So she does have that, clearly she's invested some time in her personal safety, making sure she has self-defense skills. But she was working alone that day. The attacker came to the open house and was looking around. He actually gave her his information. They chatted for a little bit, told her where he worked. He had written down his name when he signed in. I think they talked about family. And then another couple or a group or something, some other people came into the open house, and he looked around for another minute and then left. He comes back a short time later when there's nobody there with a wrench, and he ended up repeatedly hitting her over the head with this wrench. And she fought back the entire time, and she actually survived and was able to, once he left, she was able to fight back into the point where he took off, and she was able to call 911, but she does have some pretty severe head injuries. But the fact that she was able to fight back, and we'll talk a little bit more about, the idea of fighting if you have to when you're in that situation. But that potentially saved her life. But the fact that she was alone probably was, I think, the biggest, I don't want to say mistake that she made, but probably the biggest opportunity that attacker took advantage of. Because if you noticed earlier, his behavior is pretty normal. So we don't know exactly what happened either. We don't know exactly what his motivation was, what kind of switched, or if his plan the initial time he walked in was to attack her. But basically those other people that walked in potentially also, saved her at that point when the first time he came, because there were other folks there, other people witnessing what could have gone on. He left and he decided not to commit the crime at that time. Again, came back later when the home was empty. So that's something to think about. If you have just one other witness, someone else there, that is a huge deterrent. If you, for some reason, are not able to have somebody there, you want to at least make sure that people know where you are. So make sure that you have a couple friends, a couple, your family members, other people in your office that know the exact address where you are and how long you're supposed to be there, and what your plan is. So you need to, put those things in place, make sure that I always recommend sharing your location with those people on your Find My Friends app. If you have other personal safety apps, those are good things to utilize as well. But make sure that that other people are aware of where you should be, how long you should be gone. And then, if you can't physically have someone else there with you, that's, like I said, the ideal situation. Make sure that there's someone who is at least going to be looking out for you, whether that's checking in with you every hour or every half hour, whatever that is. Make sure that you have, people who are aware of where you are and know, if you don't hear from me every 30 minutes, call the police kind of thing. So make sure you set that up and you have that buddy system, that community, that team that's going to be part of your personal safety plan. And then in terms of, another thing, we're talking about isolation, talking about wanting to work in remote areas or being, trying to not be seen. These criminals, their goal is to not be seen. If you can avoid scheduling showings after dark, and I know that's probably getting harder right now with, it's we're coming up on October and the change of the time change, and it's going to get dark sooner. A lot of people, by the time they get off work, it's dark. So especially in those situations, you want to be stepping up your security or your personal safety measures. So definitely if it's going to be after dark, I recommend having another person with you and bring a flashlight with you. We'll talk a little bit more about tools that you can use and potential weapons if need be. A flashlight can be used in that situation as well. So not only, if you're walking back and forth to your car in the dark, or when you first, walk into a property, if it's dark, you have your flashlight. But yeah, it's just one of those things that can, be a tool that you can use not only, to light the path or shine it in somebody's eyes, but also if you need to physically hit someone, something like that, a flashlight is, a good resource to bring with you. And especially if you're doing a showing or something when it's going to be dark outside. Again, if you can avoid that, that's ideal. The next best thing, to have someone else with you, and then make sure you have, a tool with you. And we did talk about how, most of these criminals and attackers and mindsets are money driven. So usually they're looking for some sort of financial gain. I talked about how jewelry is something that they're often looking for. So when you're thinking about your clothing choices, if you're going to be going to, do a show or something like that, leave your expensive jewelry at home. Don't bring that with you. I would also consider, when it comes to clothing choices, wearing comfortable shoes. So I know we all want to wear, heels, and we want to look our best and put, our best foot forward. But you want to make sure that whatever shoe that you're wearing, that it's something that if you need to exit a situation as quickly as possible, that you're able to do that. So think about, even when it comes to your clothing choices, if you're setting yourself up for success with those. Again, kind of coming back to the money situation and the financially driven mindset. I remember reading about one realtor who was attacked, and they actually spoke with the attacker and got, a statement from him, and he said his motivation was she looked like she was rich, and so that's why that's why I went after her. He had actually targeted her specifically because in her marketing and advertising, I don't know if she was wearing, what kind of jewelry she was wearing or that kind of thing, but of course you want to put your best foot forward. But when it comes to maybe your social media, that kind of thing, maybe not showing off your personal wealth in that kind of regard, maybe not showing what type of vehicle you drive, not wearing fancy jewelry or anything in the way you present yourself, not only in person, but on social media and through your marketing, I think is important as well. So you kind of want to think about that. I also recommend doing a mini background check. So you want to have some other procedures in place that are going to set you up for success, and make sure when you're interacting with a stranger, you have a little bit of the upper hand, because obviously as a real estate agent, you're putting yourself out there, you're doing marketing, you're putting your face out there, especially with social media nowadays. People have a lot more access to information about you. So the more you can protect yourself, the better, but the more that you can try to gain information about the other party as well, the better you can be equipped to enter, an interaction with that person. So we talked about the last couple of years, trying to get that person, having part of your procedures getting a copy of that person's driver's license. Ideally, if you could have that person meet you at your office or a public, space, a place that's, not private, to get that copy of that driver's license, that's ideal. I understand with everything becoming electronic nowadays, that's probably becoming more difficult. So what I would recommend, in the next best thing you can do if you can't have a meeting in person, someplace public, someplace, or like your office, a safe space that you'll have other coworkers, that kind of thing around. The next best thing you can do is I would still require getting a photo of the person's driver's license, one way or another, being like, hey, it's our procedure. I need to get, can you take a picture of your driver's license and send it to me if you can't come in? And still running your own mini background check on that person. I hope you guys are all aware of the Megan's Law website. Just Google Megan's Law California, and it'll take you right to the website. You can put that person's name in, and what Megan's Law is it has all of the registered sex offenders, all of their locations, and so basically you can put the name in, or you can run it by location. I was looking to move recently, and every time I was looking at different areas, I would always put, addresses in and do like a little radius around where I was looking, to see, hey, what kind of activity, what kind of people live in this neighborhood? Is there anything that I should be concerned about? So you can use that same tool to run an individual's name and see if there's any history of any kind of, sex crime related to that person, and it'll give you that information. If that person does come up, I would recommend, if you can, not working with them, or definitely never meeting with them one-on-one. So there's that. And then also you're going to want to run that person's name through Google and social media. That will give you an idea of, if there's any other things of concern, or even just social media is a good idea to get a little bit of an idea of that person's maybe character, their habits, that kind of thing. Not only can it potentially equip you, obviously you don't want to be too much of a creeper and say that you've already done all this research, but kind of give you an idea of who you're dealing with. So I feel like that's also going to give you good tools as a real estate agent to know the personality of the person you might be dealing with, what their interests are, what, their values are. And then, it just kind of gives you that kind of edge as well. So you kind of already know who you're dealing with when you go in, and it gives you a sense of, you kind of have a little bit of knowledge of that person as well, where it's not they're just coming in knowing all this information about you. So that's definitely something I would recommend doing. Make that a procedure that you do every time you're going to work with somebody. Just say, hey, I'm going to need a copy of your driver's license for your file. So yeah, that's definitely like the first thing I would do before I work with anybody. And I know that, there's a lot of, things move really fast, and like really, really fast in the real estate industry. And you want to be able to get someone to a showing like right away, and that kind of thing. And that's why I'm, saying, if, we do have to slow the process down a little bit to go ahead and get a copy of the driver's license and that kind of thing. But you can run your little mini background check on your phone really quickly. So even if you can't slow it down enough to meet them in person in a public space and that kind of thing, make sure that you're taking at least a step or two to know get an idea of who you're going to be meeting with before you meet with them in person. And then we did talk about personal safety tools, and, flashlight is one of the ones that I've heard recommended, and that I would recommend as well. Not only could you use it to, shine a light in someone's eyes if needed, you could use it as just as a hard object to use if you needed to use it for some sort of blunt force situation. But, also, I don't know if you guys had the Jen from the Damsels in Defense speak to you guys again this year, but I think she has some great tools. I can't endorse any specific brands or companies, but some of the tools and resources that I've seen her present are great things that I would consider, thinking about getting pepper spray, thinking about getting a stun gun. If you want to invest in a firearm or that kind of thing, make sure that you know what you're doing. You go through the proper training, you go through the concealed carry procedure, you make sure you're doing everything correct in that regard. But I would recommend taking something with you. And your cell phone should be one of your main personal safety tools. Make sure that you have that physically on your person. Don't just carry it in your purse where you're going to set it down and kind of forget about it, especially if you're at a showing or an open house. That needs to be in your pocket or on your belt, however you want to attach it to yourself. Even if you have to carry it in your hand the entire time, you need to have your phone on your person available so that you can call 911 if you need to, or utilize one of your personal safety apps. When it does come to personal safety apps, I recommend that you have your first thing you should always do is call the police if you are in a dangerous situation. Calling your mom or your best friend or whoever else are your your go-to contact for personal safety. That's great. It's good to have other people, like I said, make sure other people know where you're at and kind of, can be keeping an eye on you and your location. But if you're in a dangerous situation or if there's something that is not right and you know it, the police should be the first people that you make that phone call to. And with that being said, make sure that you know the address of the location that you're at. I know you're probably, jumping around to a few different properties sometimes when you're doing showings, that kind of thing. Make sure that you have a note or something on your phone, something really quick that you can get to, and try to, as best you can, at least know the street that you're on. Give us the best location that you can when you call the police. That's really important for our dispatchers because usually with cell phones, they can get a general, sometimes they can get a better, more solid location, but sometimes they only get a general area. And so, we'll get to the general area, but we won't know which unit you're in or which, house number you're at. So if you can keep that information top of mind and be prepared to share it, that's an important thing to think about as well. But yeah, make sure that your cell phone is one of your best communication tools. It's one of your best self-defense tools, I guess. So keep that in mind as well. Make sure it's something that's very accessible to you because even if you use one of your other tools, your cell phone is the first thing you want to grab afterwards that you can call us so that we can respond as quickly as possible and apprehend the attacker. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about tools. It looks like Kim just mentioned an app that has some great features on it that you can use for personal safety as well. So definitely check that out. I also recommend taking a personal or a self-defense class if you can. I know in the past couple of years, Jen from Campus Defense has talked about how she's, they offer some. I would definitely encourage you to look into some sort of self-defense class. Maybe do it as a team, maybe do it with your family or with, a group of girlfriends or, anybody. It's a good way to, there you go, you get some social time with the people that you want to be spending time with. But what it really is going to do is kind of keep safety and security as top of mind. So I know, September, we take the time to think about safety as real estate agents, what you guys can be doing. But awareness and having safety and self-defense is something that's kind of on your mind on a more regular basis is a great thing to do. So if you can, once a month, once a week, be going and taking a self-defense class, I definitely think that will give you the skills and the confidence to use those skills if you're in a dangerous situation. This may sound silly, but when I was in college, I ended up taking a self-defense class at my university. And just how I naturally am is probably a little bit more on the soft-spoken side. I'm not the loudest person. And one of the basic things that I learned in that class was that you need to yell when you're in a confrontation with, a potential attacker. You need to use your voice. Your voice is one of your best tools. And the good thing for me was in that class, we practiced like yelling and having to, shout and draw attention to yourself. And for me, that's not my natural go-to reaction to things. So having that practice and knowing that that's something that I needed to do, that's not my natural go-to. Is yelling at someone is not my natural reaction to most situations, but practicing it made it feel more natural and I felt more capable after going through that class of like, not only am I aware of different maneuvers and things that I can do to get out of a situation, but I've practiced yelling. And that could be the difference between, you know, life and death too. Like I talked about, criminals that don't want to be caught. They don't want attention drawn to themselves. If you guys remember that Encino realtor that who, you know, was pushed down in front of the house, one of the best things she did was she screamed the entire time. First of all, she's outside where there's a lot of visibility. Second of all, screaming, yelling, using your voice is going to draw attention. And again, that guy took off within, you know, a few seconds after pushing her to the ground. And I think part of that is because of the way that she used her voice. And so I learned in that self-defense class, you know, how to do that, something that's not natural to my, you know, personality, but I practiced it and I really learned how valuable that was. And I got to practice, you know, some other things as well, but making those things a kind of something that you practice and you feel more capable, you build your confidence in your ability to do something. And it's going to give you those tools where if you're in a situation that's dangerous, I know my natural tendency, I'm not a sworn police officer. I'm a civilian employee here at the police department. You know, I did not go through the police academy. So I, you know, have a different, you know, background, different experiences. And I, you know that my personality is more of like, okay, if I'm in a new situation or something scary, I don't know if I would freeze or not. And I think that I might tend to be more on the side of the person that freezes if I don't know what to do. So if I can be already practicing some things and know that I have tools and options in my head and have a certain sense of awareness, I feel more capable of handling a situation that comes up and being able to react and do something instead of just freezing. So again, that's why I think self-defense class and having some sort of ongoing safety and personal safety and self-defense mindset is really helpful. So especially in your guys' line of work where you potentially could be in those vulnerable situations on a regular basis. And then practicing awareness on a daily basis is really important. So that kind of, you know, is along the same lines where, hey, you're regularly participating in a group in an activity that is focused on personal safety, and then taking that awareness that you have and using it on a daily basis. So I would start, like, you know, even just in small ways, being a little bit more aware. So when you go into the grocery store, when you know, are out and about, notice where, you know, some exits are when you walk into a room. Know what, if you have options. We talk about this when we do some active shooter trainings. I help out with those here at the police department. And we talk about all the time, like, okay, in your office, do you know if someone came through the front door and so that exit was blocked for you, how else could you get out of this room or out of this building? And usually, especially in buildings that you're not familiar with, if you're going to a doctor's appointment, if you're going, you know, you guys going to a showing of a home that you haven't been to before, the first thing you should be trying to note is, okay, do I have any other exit options? Is there a window I could get out of? Is there, you know, a door that I could shut to create a barrier? Kind of start running through some scenarios in your mind. And I know that that's not, especially for civilians like us, you know, it's not a natural go-to to think about, okay, like, how am I going to get out of this situation if I need to? But start playing that game with yourself and, you know, kind of noticing where your exit opportunities are. That way you're already kind of playing scenarios in your mind, preparing yourself if something did happen and you needed to get out of that situation immediately. So that's one way to practice awareness. Another way is to avoid distractions. So I know we all have our cell phones that we, you know, are on all the time. And I'm sure you guys are so busy getting emails, text messages, all that kind of stuff. But I would definitely encourage you, especially when you're on a showing at an open house, don't keep, or like even walking, you know, in your personal life, just like on a walk or something like that, if you keep your head down and you're not paying attention to your surroundings, you just cut off your sense of awareness of what's going on around you. One moment. Sorry, I just need some tea. My throat has been a little bit dry. But yeah, so make sure that you use your eyes, you use your vision to be able to see, pay attention to some things going on around you, not only noting where the exits are, but watching the behavior of the people that you're with, not letting your guard down. Your emails, text messages, those kind of things, I know that they're urgent. People feel like they can get, you know, reach you at any time if they need to, but wait until you're in a safe place back in your car or that kind of thing, so that you can be fully aware, fully present when you're in a situation that might be more vulnerable. And then also paying attention to your intuition is a great way to practice awareness on a daily basis. So your intuition is kind of like your instinct. It's that thing that tells you like, there's something different in this situation, something that's not right. This is not, normal. Something about this person, something about, maybe you walk into a room or a store or something, you're like, something just feels off. Start paying attention to that. It might be, for some people, it might be a gut feeling. For other people, you might feel it like maybe in your chest a little bit. Some people say the hairs on their arm or the back of their neck stand up when they just get this feeling of like, something's not right here. Usually you walk in a situation and you're like, you can't identify it exactly right away, but something is telling you that something's off. And that can even be like in your personal life. Maybe that's an interaction with a family member or a friend, and you ask them, hey, how you doing? They say something and you kind of feel like that's not the whole story, or you need to ask more questions. Pay attention to that. Hang on one second. So make this a regular practice to be aware of that, paying attention to that. Don't talk yourself out of it or like just move on with your day. Make it a practice that, okay, I'm going to stop be more mindful of this feeling. Like, hey, how does this feel? Do I feel it in my chest? Do I feel it in my gut? What's going on? And then let that create a heightened sense of awareness. Maybe it makes you ask a question. If it's with a family member or something, like you could just pause and just be like, ask some more questions. Like take that as a sign, something that you need to know that requires more alertness or more attention on your part or more time. An example I heard recently was that, a deer in the woods, like out in nature, a deer in the woods, if it hears a twig snap, it's not just gonna like move on with its day and just be like, oh, everything's fine. Usually if they hear something, they give any indication that there's activity, they take off right away because they know that could potentially be danger. If you hear something, see something, experience some sort of feeling that tells you, hey, this might be danger, even if it's nothing in that situation, train yourself to pay attention to it and to allow that to create a heightened sense of awareness and alertness in you. And, like I said, even if everything's fine, practicing that, especially if you're the type of person who's like trained yourself to kind of just move on with your day, you've kind of trained yourself to ignore it or just kind of like talk yourself out of listening to that little voice. I would encourage you to start practicing listening to it and, pausing and taking a moment to pay attention to what's going on. And then with that as well, so when you're in a situation, you're with, a client, you're showing a house, you're in an open house and there's folks coming in and out. If there's something that feels off, pay attention to it. And if you can, positioning is really important in how you set yourself up in a room to interact with other people. So if there's something that kind of gives you that like feeling of something's off, even if you're not 100% sure, the way you position yourself, you create space between yourself and another person is really important. You want to make sure that you are putting yourself you're not backing yourself into a corner in any way. So there's a couple things you can do when it comes to positioning and placement of where you even put your body. One of those ways is, like I said, creating space. We talked about making sure you know where your exits are. If you can position yourself to be closer to, the back door or closer to the front door, depending on where you're at and where that other person is, put yourself in a situation where you can get to an exit quickly. If you're also in a situation where you are feeling like there's something off with this person, if you can put a barrier between yourself and the other person, whether that's a counter, a kitchen table, a bed, whatever it is in that home, in that space, I would encourage you to do that as well, just because that's gonna limit that person's options of getting to you. I remember when I was in parking control, one of my supervisors was training me and she taught me this. She taught me about, when you're dealing with, if you're towing someone's car and they're angry, you're dealing with a person who could potentially be aggressive, put something between yourself and that person. And she told me about this time where this man was getting really heated, really aggressive, and she was waiting for an officer to come to assist her. And she was standing on one side of her parking control truck. He was standing on the other, and she could tell he was trying to like get around and get to her, and she would just keep moving the other way. And she's like, we like danced around this truck for like who knows how long, and she's talking to the guy the whole time, trying to like talk him down, calm him down. And I think she was able to, but she's like, I don't even know if he noticed that he was trying to do that. But she was aware that she was putting space between herself and that person, and she used that truck as like her personal safety protection from a potentially dangerous situation. So yeah, and then in terms of positioning as well, how you physically interact, I would encourage you never to turn your back on a client or someone that you're showing a house to or in an open house, because you're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation at that point. So never turn your back to them. Make sure that if they want to go upstairs, you let them go ahead. You don't even need to join them if you don't want to, but definitely don't be the first one to go up the stairs. When it comes to positioning or even any kind of personal safety thing, just know, just make adjustments as you need to. Even if you did something wrong, even if you're like, oh shoot, like I turned my back on this person, or I, didn't create like a barrier, or I don't have an exit anywhere near me. Think about some other things you can be doing. So let's say that you did go up the stairs in front of the client. Like, okay, where can I position myself now? Can I put a barrier or like set myself up so that I'm in a situation where I can get away or at least create some distance between that person? So just know that, even if you do something that if you didn't follow your first instinct or intuition right away, pick yourself up where you're at, keep moving, adjust as you need to. And, one mistake doesn't need to lead to like a lot more. Let yourself, pick yourself up wherever you're at in that situation and move on from there. So let me see what else we have. Oh, I always talk about this when we're talking about active shooter situations too, which I feel could apply if you're in, a situation with the person who is like aggressive, potential attacker in a home. This is something we talk about in active shooter. You want to run, and then your next option would be to fight if you have to. So that's when it comes to, positioning and knowing your exits. We talked about that. If you can get out of a situation, that's ideal. If you can put yourself, get out into the front yard like that Encino real estate agent did, put yourself somewhere that's visible. But if you can run away or physically get away from that person, do that first. Your next option would be, if you can't run, if there's nowhere else for you to go, then you want to fight if you have to. And again, kind of know what your options are. If this person wants your jewelry or some sort of physical property, hey, that is more, let that go. You'd rather have your life than, something physical, like some material possession. But at some point you need to know when, okay, I need to fight back. I need to do something to protect myself. Again, this is a time when you need to use your voice. Make sure that you be as loud as you can. Again, they're trying not to draw attention to themselves. So if you can start drawing attention to the situation, great. That's really important. You need to be doing that because that's going to get you help as soon as possible. And then also remember your tools. If you have to fight, again, this is where, doing a self-defense class, or if you have other tools like pepper spray, like a stun gun, making sure you're comfortable using them, practicing using them. That's when that's going to really come in handy. Know your tools, know how to use them, know how to get to them quickly if you need to. And then remember too that tools don't need to just be, pepper spray, a stun gun, a firearm, anything like that. Anything that you can grab, that you can throw, like heavy object. When we're talking about active shooter situations with people, we're like, hey, if you're in your office and there's a stapler, or you see a vase, or you see something around you, whatever you can get to that you can use to fend off this attacker, you're going to want to use it, whatever you can physically see. So start putting that in your practicing of awareness as well. When I go into situations, note your exits, pay attention to okay, I could grab that book if I needed to, and use it to, defend myself or to throw at somebody. With that being said, most of the time these people go into a situation assuming that they're going to have control. If they have, I talked about this again, I'm going back to the active shooter training that we usually give, but it fits here too. An active shooter or someone who's going to commit a crime comes in with the mindset that they are going to be in control of the situation. And usually their adrenaline's going and they can get tunnel vision. So if you fight back, and whether that means throw something, scream, whatever it is, if you don't just go along with what they're saying, you're going to throw them off because they get that tunnel vision. They expect to be in control. They expect you to listen to what they're doing. If you fight back, that's going to kind of throw them off and it's going to give you the upper hand. So that's why, if you're in that situation where you can't do anything, but your last resort is to fight, do not be afraid to 100% do whatever you have to do to fight. And whether that's, using your hands, your feet, if you can grab an object, whatever it is, don't be afraid to 100% just go for it. So yeah, that's just, something to keep in mind. Hopefully, none of us get into that situation. Hopefully nobody's in a situation where they do have to use, their tools or fight or run when something happens. But if you're that person who's in that situation, you want to know that you had the practice and the resources, and you're going to thank yourself so much when you have some of those tools in your tool belt to know what to do. I recently came across this. It looks like it's kind of a more brand new YouTube channel. It's called Seizing Safety, like seizing, like grabbing something, the word seizing. It's with Donna Heltzer and another gentleman based in Denver. She was a realtor who was doing an open house. She had, I don't think the open house officially started, but she got there. She was turning lights on, getting set up. Someone knocked on the door. She let the gentleman in. They were talking. Her intuition kind of went off. There were some things going on that were a little bit off, but nothing that she could put her finger on, nothing that she could pinpoint that was like, that was weird, until looking back. Then she was able to be like, okay, yeah, I could tell my intuition was going off when this, and this happened. And she ended up upstairs in the unit with the guy, and he pulled a knife out and had some pepper spray. And she had been doing like firearms training, and she had her firearm on her person, and she was able to actually get away. And so I would actually recommend go checking out her video, her first video on that YouTube channel. It's again called Seizing Safety, and she talks about how her training, she like hoped that she would never have to use the training and the practice that she had with her firearm in a real life situation, but it ended up saving her life because the guy pulled out the knife and said, give me your ring. She had actually a really pretty wedding ring on, and it was he said, give me your ring and get in the closet. And he had the knife, and he had some bear spray with him as well. She bent down, her weapon was like on her ankle, so she grabbed the gun, and he sprayed the pepper spray, and she shot. I don't think she ended up hitting him. I think he just ended up taking off. But like that practice and that preparation that she hoped she would never have to use ended up saving her life. So, remember that you have lots of tools available to you. Remember to practice using them and practice paying attention to your intuition, being aware, adjusting as you need to. If something, doesn't go quite right or something seems off, or you wish you would have done something differently, adjust, pivot, do what you need to do. And then, from there, just, take the next step that you can. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking out her YouTube series. Remember that your personal safety is all about layers and all about having multiple measures up. There's not one catch-all thing that could end up saving you in a dangerous situation. So make sure that you are, starting with the background checks, starting like your little mini background checks, starting with your appearance or like different, clothing choices, that kind of thing, in terms of making sure that you can run or you're not being too flashy with jewelry and that kind of thing. It starts with like little choices like that happen before you even interact with the person. And then once you're interacting with someone, paying attention to your intuition, being aware. It starts with all those little things, and that really is going to empower you to, to protect yourself or keep yourself from a more dangerous situation. So I hope that this has all been really helpful. Remember that you have a lot of tools available to you. You have, whether that's skills, habits, different protocols you can have in place, make sure you're practicing those as best you can. Make sure that you're talking about it with coworkers. If you see a situation that seems off, share that with your team and other people that you interact with. Be like, hey, this guy showed up to this, he seemed a little bit weird. Or if you had, an incident or something that, seemed off, make sure that you guys are having those conversations. This should be something that you're gonna, be talking about regularly, so it's top of mind. So I just want to make sure that you guys feel like you have tools, things that you can do, so that you don't feel like if you're ever in a situation you have no options. You have a lot of options. You have a lot of things you can do if you take the time to prepare and build some skills and habits and put those protocols in place. So I'd love to take questions. If anybody has a question they want to put in the note or in the chat section, I'll keep an eye on that. Or if you want to raise your hand. Let's see.
Sara, the information you've given today has just been so valuable, and I really appreciate your time. I know there's a lot of aspects to safety, and you touched on very important ones that they need to be aware of, and I appreciate that. Does anybody have anything they'd like to mention or discuss with Sara before we conclude here today? No? All righty. Oh, here we go. Thank you for the info. What is the name of the YouTube video about safety?
Okay, it's called Seizing Safety. You know what? Let me type it in here. And it's a YouTube channel, actually, and they only have 2 videos up right now. But I thought that they were really great. Here, I'll send that in right now. Yeah, I thought they were really great. It's a great story that this lady has. Again, she has a firearm. She went through the training for that. She practiced. I'm not saying everybody needs to get a gun or everybody should get a gun, but it just, kind of lets you know that, hey, having some tools. She talks about her experience and the decision-making process that she made and what she would have done differently next time. But I think her story is a really great story to hear. And then she's partnered with a retired Denver officer who now is working in real estate. And so he asked her some great questions, and then they talk about intuition and that kind of thing. So they only have 2 videos up right now, but I'm actually looking forward to seeing if they have some more resources coming that could be helpful. I think that it sounds like they're planning on going more in depth in some other aspects of personal safety. So that's something to check out and keep an eye on. But yeah, I really enjoyed her story and her the takeaways that she was able to share from that. Are there any other questions?
Thank you again, Sara. I really, really appreciate your time today. And I know that I've told you over and over, the realtor safety in our community is so important to me. And I really appreciate you speaking to us each year and giving everybody that refresher they need to keep themselves safe and do business safely. That's wonderful.
Yes, of course. My pleasure. I'm really glad I have the opportunity to talk to you all. Newport Beach is a really safe community, and we have, just so you guys know, we have very little violent crime, property crime is more of what we see in our city. But in terms of violent crime, we see low numbers. Usually it's in situations where it's a known suspect to the person involved. But these things happen everywhere, and they can happen to anyone at any time. So, I don't want you guys to be afraid, necessarily living in fear, but there is something about having a little bit of fear that creates that awareness and the, motivation to be, when you're in a situation that could be vulnerable, having just a healthy little amount of fear that motivates you to be aware or alert, I think is a good, healthy thing. So I'm not trying to, freak anybody out or make you consider a career change, because, in everyday life, something could happen to anybody. Like I was talking about, we have active shooter situations. that we train people for. And like, again, that can happen to anybody at any time. But if you can, like I said, practice and get that awareness up, make yourself feel more comfortable, and know that you have tools and options and resources. I think that that's that's the key to making sure that you are prepared for those situations.
Thank you so much. Everybody
Of course.
have a great day. I really appreciate everybody's time, and stay safe.
Okay, thanks for having me.